So it's time to take a look at the front pages of the newspaper. And here is Arise analyst Constance Ikoko for that.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Constance.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you on daybreak, on weekdays, because you're here on the weekend.
Yeah, it's always been the weekend. But
yes.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And then Yolanda, good morning to you.
Good morning, Dr. Constance. It's good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too. All right, look at the papers with us today. We have Dulu Mbachu. He is a writer, editor, and former bureau chief at Bloomberg News. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day. There we have FG's half-year tax revenues jump 43% to 14.27 trillion naira. Do rebates GDP Q1 growth estimates signs of nation's economic resilience, a renewed momentum. That story also features in The Guardian as lead, so let's see The Guardian. 43% spike in tax revenue spurs hope for fiscal recovery, deficit cuts. This Guardian report is complete with a graph that shows the revenue trajectory from January to June 2025, with the conclusion that if the government continues with this trend, it will close the year with 28.54 trillion naira, translating to 7.7% of GDP, which is not enough to raise the government's equity contribution to the 2025 budget of 55 trillion naira, but it is a start. Julio, please put on your business editor hat and give us your quick take on the story.
Yeah, I think it's a sign of continuing progress in finding alternative sources of revenue for the government outside the oil industry, and what you're seeing here is Tinubu is kind of trying to replicate what he did in Lagos. Lagos was one of the first states in Nigeria that kind of began to sustain itself on tax revenue, and that was the basis for the bonds it issued, which was used to mostly finance the metro project in Lagos. So we are seeing a kind of shift, where we are depending less on oil revenue and then depending more on tax revenue to fund government activities. And if this progression continues, I think it's a good thing, because we've been talking about diversifying the economy and becoming less oil dependent. And this seems to be moving in that direction.
And of course, using those new funds well, and efficiently.
Of course.
Yes, not mismanaging them.
Of course.
Let's throw that in.
Of course, that's always a question.
All right. A second story in this day, let's stay with that paper. Here at Damagu, PDP's problems are self-inflicted. Defectors should return or leave in peace. We won't tolerate indiscipline. Indiscipline indeed, and inability to keep the party's rules and constitution. You have to ask, why exactly is Damagu still the acting chairman of the party? He has been acting chairman since 2023. It has been part of the crisis in the party where the position should have been filled by the North Central, but at least they're acknowledging that their problems come from within the party and they're looking to solve it at Dulu.
Yeah, PDP has been dysfunctional, I would say, since even before the 2023 elections. We know the crisis that erupted between the candidate Atiku Abubakar and Nyesom Wike, and the party hasn't recovered from that. It's been kind of in limbo, and I think that's what has been, continuing. It's been a protracted sickness for the party, and that's why you have a lot of anomalies, still manifesting there. So that's why Damagu is still chairman for such a long time, because the party hasn't been able to get its acts together.
All right, let's move on to Vanguard newspaper. A French media giant acquires multi-choice, gains full control of DSTV, GoTV. Canal Plus acquired the company in a $35 billion stake. Deal rather. It gives it 55% stake it did not own previously. This deal comes with some conditions around public interest and local content. the takeover would certainly mean a shift of ownership and control. MultiChoice had been a symbol of media success in Africa. While this, deal, injects more funds that is much needed, it will also raise, questions about content, cultural impact, foreign agenda setting, employment, job cuts, and the rest of it. Duliu, from a business point as well as content and control lens, how do you view this deal?
Well, it's part of a trend we've seen in Africa. When successful companies emerge and start doing well, then you find people, coming outside Africa to push them. We've seen a pattern. We saw it with Paystack, we saw it with Men1 in Nigeria, and then in the case of MultiChoice in South Africa, which kind of became a sort of African champion. The example of this post-apartheid success of South African companies, which kind of eventually spread all over Africa, So it became a kind of a symbol of African success, So for the French giant Canal Plus to take it away would seem like a loss to Africa, in a sense, But then they've talked about content and about ensuring public interest. I don't know how much, that will be their working reality, but then, we have to see, to believe.
Exactly. It's not only companies, there's also startups that are being poached.
Yeah.
Like you said, successful companies are taking over. I don't know whether we think about the control and what this means, long term for the continent, but it is happening. Big money, big capital coming from outside to take over. We'll look at Leadership newspaper this morning. Protect local industries. In fact, this ties into it.
Yes.
Protect local industries from unfair competition, Dangote tells African leaders. And the second story, ahead of the NEC meeting, PDP loses 17 senators, 22 reps in 2 years. Yolanda, you jumped at that, so I'll have you comment on this, but let me finish. Aliko Dangote, argued that US, Canada, and European Union do protect their industries. To add to that, he says Africans now face increasing dumping of cheap toxic petroleum products that will never be allowed in Europe or North America. He made other points here, but very valid points he has raised. There's always that take or argument about opening the markets, free markets and all of that. But other countries are strategic about also protecting their own when and if necessary, Yolanda.
Dr. Constance, what I was thinking when we were talking about Canal Plus taking over MultiChoice, related to this story that we're taking now, is that, in just some few weeks ago, there was a celebration about how certain French countries were exiting, out of parts of West Africa. And now we have them coming in a different way. And it really just opens your eyes to the realities of what's happening on the African continent, the unfair competition, and the fact that we really need to step up our game to be able to take our territory back, so to speak, and we need more regional cooperation. Just as you've said, we need to have more African countries take over our major industries so that they're not overrun by other countries.
Well said. Frank, do you want to comment on that second story on PDP losing 17 senators, 22 reps in 2 years?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I think the PDP seems to be, the question is, where are they at the moment in terms of scheme of things, preparing ahead of 2027. And when you look at the PDP, to be honest and give it to them, they have the structure. But in terms of influence, it seems that the PDP is really losing its influence at the moment. Look at the over 2 years, we've had 22 senators and 17 senators and 22 members of House of Rep defected now. So the question is that do they still have the weight? But if they, so the argument whether about if they still have a structure or if they have the weight, they have the structure, but the weight is what we cannot talk about. I think they need a face, someone that can pull them together. The issue of Damagun, being the challenge, or will I say, the problem in the party has also come on the fore at a point, and they said he had to go. But I mean, the question is, if he continues there, will he attract the needed power or the weight to remain valuable and relevant and play as opposition ahead of 2027? That's a big question.
Big question, Frank, indeed. Moving on to the Guardian newspaper, 43% spike in tax revenue. Okay, we've seen that. There's a second story in the Guardian. Port inefficiencies, corruption spike, inflation, logistics caused by 40%. You know, this is a long-standing problem in our ports, inefficiency. Stakeholders in this report conclude that in spite of reforms, our ports are broken. Broken links in the supply chain from the ports to the hinterland, driving up inflation, stifling productivity, just, you know, hampering prosperity. Julie, if this government is able to pay attention to this and solve this mega problem, it will be like no other government. And this is something that is really crucial for the economy.
Yeah,
and affects businesses as well.
Yeah, it's been begging, you know, to be solved for a long time. You know, the infrastructure problem Nigeria has, you know, whether you're talking about the ports or the railways, the roads, and the airports and everything, you know, because I remember that from way back in the 60s, 50s, you had a rail line running all the way from Ido into the Apapa port. You know, so from the foundational periods of the country's existence, we've known that it's important to link the ports to the railways so that they can take goods to the inland and then bring it back to the ports for export. You know, but somehow these ideas got abandoned over the years, and it's still been begging to be resolved. You know, so because if you have a well-developed port connected to a well-developed railway and road system, you know, and then you can then talk about breaking away from oil dependence and diversifying the economy, because that's when people will have the instruments they need to be able to take the economy in a different direction. You know? So I do agree that it's of vital importance that these issues be addressed, you know, because most bureaucrats see the facilities as a place to make money, and that's why you're talking about corruption. So that then defeats the purpose of setting it up. So
I don't know if any of you has taken the Abuja-Kaduna train. It's about 2 hours from Abuja to Kaduna. It was initiated during President Goodluck Jonathan administration, and I think it was completed under President Muhammadu Buhari. It's such a wonderful, nice ride. And every time I take that ride, it makes you think about how successful it will be if we had those same train system for goods, movement of goods from one part of the country to the other, and if, you know, the entire country is really connected by rail. And when you look at the state governors that are now setting up airlines, the kind of money that we use to set up those airlines, if regional governments can put money together and connect their states, how much, you know, that would help commerce in the country. Anyway, let's see Daily Trust newspaper. Nentawe tipped to chair APC, and another story, the factions APC inches closer to 2/3 majority in the Senate. Professor Nentawe Yutada is currently the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. This report claims the chairmanship has been narrowed to him and Senator Tanko Almakura. The zoning of chairmanship to the North Central is being seen as a strategic move to placate that zone, especially with the Muslim presidency. Then on the chairmanship decision, I mean, it will give an indication on how the party combines the presidential ticket in terms of zoning and religious affiliation. And for the 2/3 majority, once the APC is able to secure this, it's a big deal because it means that they can pass any bill without opposition. Anyone wants to jump in here? Yolanda, Frank, any thoughts on that?
Well, of course, let me start with, you know, Nentawe, which has been tipped as the APC chairman. Of course, this could serve as a generational shift when you look at possibly, I mean, his emergency. Some people are saying that it could serve as a generational shift because he's young. But the question is, what qualities should a national chairman of a political party like APC possess? Don't forget that it started with Adams Oshiomhole. I mean, the bickerings and the divide, the APC back then, and Adams Oshiomhole couldn't do much. I mean, and then of course we have a committee that was put together led by Ibn, I guess at the point, and then I beg your pardon, Ganduje, stepped in, and now we're having to consider an entire as the chairman now.
All right.
So can he pull that weight really? Because some people are looking at he's young, does he have the weight really? And some people are saying, okay, let's zone this so not central. Perhaps maybe APC will be able to see that and say, okay, I think it's time for us to give it to not central. All
right, other papers quickly. The Punch, tariff battle escalates, discuss reject review talks with states. 36 state energy commissions to meet FG as tariff showdown worsens. This is a developing story that we will be watching for you. The Enugu State Electricity Regulatory Commission, which reduced its tariff, is specifically saying that it stands by its decision and that it does not tamper with the cost of power generation, and that there's no reason to keep the band of the price for band A at 209 naira per kilowatt in Enugu State. There you have it, states and federal government at each other's truth over this. We also have other papers, New Telegraph this morning. We've paid dearly for our negligence. It's time to reconcile PDP. We've seen that 2027 white coalition wants to stop Tinubu by Amechi. We have other stories there. And looking also at Daily Sun, Lamido hit Tinubu APC, and then 2027 PDP elders demand presidential ticket for South. There's still that conversation on that. Tinubu hails Senate hails Tinubu's $3 billion allocation to Eastern Rail Line. Moving on to the international headlines, Daily Graphic. Stop funding foreign degrees, channel money into local universities. This is an advice by the Pro-Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs of the University of Ghana. He says local universities have a better system of identifying students who need those funds. And a second story, government to introduce new anti-witchcraft bill in Parliament. If passed into law, this will criminalize witchcraft accusations and protect those falsely accused, particularly women who are often subjected to violence and displacement. Yolanda, channeling funds to local universities is definitely a good idea, especially when these degrees are offered in the Ghanaian universities, because that's the argument here. And for the anti-witchcraft, these attacks lead to human rights abuses, and sometimes people die just from accusations.
Yes, very true. But when it comes to the universities and the foreign degrees, I couldn't agree more. I think, it's a great headline on the surface, but there's many more things to look at, such as what are the things that attract people to go overseas, because it's not just a foreign degree and just having that in name. It's other things like infrastructure, services that actually work, finishing your degree at the time that you're meant to. So there's a lot of things at play. And yes, for sure, I think it also ties in with what we were speaking about earlier on, on Africa being a little more self-reliant in going forward. Speaking on the witchcraft bill, I think it's also something that a few countries have been facing, South Africa as well, many other Southern African countries, because even in Nigeria, a lot of things have been used under the guise of witchcraft, such as being albino and many other things, many other vices that violate people's basic rights. Yeah,
definitely. The Times newspaper, Macron's, that's the French president, and his wife, Brigitte, and this story here pictured, they've sued the U.S. podcaster Candace Owens for, quote, degrading trans claims. Owens claims Brigitte was born a man and she has a whopping 4 million subscribers on her YouTube channel, listening to everything she says. So the Macrons are worried about this. You need to read the story. It's wild. So the lawsuit requests a jury trial. Well, citizen journalism, which has become very popular in the form of podcasts and the rest of it, you know, they dabble into different territories of gossip, sometimes defamation, and this is a consequence of that. Dulu, do you want to comment on this very briefly, because we're almost out of time?
Yeah, the Macrons have been dogged by all kinds of speculations about their marriage. You know, it's been a kind of so to say unique relationship, you know.
Right.
There's been the age gap, you know, and then in recent times, even on trips, there seems to be some kind of disagreement between them. So
yeah, where they had that slap,
slap. So you kind of, they're kind of giving people reason to become much more interested in what's going on in their affairs, and I think that's kind of what is manifesting, you know. And America seems to become a kind of hub of conspiracy theories in recent years. So people make up all kinds of things. There's been some groups saying Michelle Obama is a man and all that, you know. So it's part of the weirdness, you know, of the times, I would say.
All right, we'll have to go. Dulu Mbachunwa, writer, editor, and former bureau chief at Bloomberg News. Thank you for joining us. Come again.
Thank you for having me on the program.
All right.
Well, that's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I am Frank Komalape, and it's a goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Thank you again, Dr. Constance. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.